Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to All Things SOPPA, our weekly conversation about SOPPA. Um, and the slideshow is available. It's a ongoing slideshow, so it's something that you can look at any point and go back into previous weeks and see other information that's available within the slideshow. Also, these are recorded, and so they will be available on our YouTube playlist for All Things SOPA. So that's available to you at any point if you want to listen to the question and answer or see um, any originating agreements or anything like that. You can see that in the YouTube as well as the slideshow. Also, my contact information is here, so feel free to reach out to me, schedule time on my calendar to go through things one-on-one. I'm also got some stuff scheduled for that we'll talk about later as far as how to use the database and stuff like that. So April 26th and May 10th, we've got things scheduled for that. But feel free to schedule something if you need one-on-one help and need some questions answered. I can do that, or you can email me as well. So as we get started, just to get you into slido.com so that you can ask questions, if you would go to that slideshow and just kind of tell me where you're at. As we go through these, we have different people attending every week, and just trying to get a sense for where this particular group is and some ideas on if we're accomplishing anything through these things and those types of things. So feel free to share your comfort level as far as the process goes and the help that you're getting and um, the outlook on what we're dealing with SOPA. But the main reason, again, for this is just to get you into the Slido platform so that you can ask questions and they can all be together and um, don't have to be going back and forth to chat and all that stuff. So it's got a nice little feature for working with questions and answers. So please use that. And looks like everybody's kind of in the middle of the road for most people. And then hopefully we get those ones and twos up to at least 3 after today, and we'll move forward as we go. And I've probably learned more in this process than anyone, and I probably wouldn't say that I was at a 5 myself. So if that makes anybody feel any better. Again, good job sharing your questions already. We got 11 questions in there, and we'll just continue to use that, and we'll come back to the questions here in a few minutes. Usually the question that everybody wants answered for their first time attending one of these is what is SOPA? And so hopefully you're starting to hear more about this, and your leadership and your um, different people in your organizations are learning what SOPA is. And really it's about getting a handle on where student data is and having data privacy agreements with those different applications so that we know who has the data, what they're doing with it, that they are held to a certain standard, and that we know what's going to happen to that data when we're no longer using it. And then specifically what information that there is that they have access to. These different resources on this webpage will provide you with different conversation pieces that you can pass along to your technology person or your curriculum person or your principals, your superintendents in different conversations. And there's also a link to the Illinois Student Privacy Alliance, which is kind of the how to implement the stuff around data agreement. So use those resources to kind of think about what is SOPA. And the other thing that this is related to is there's other resources related to data privacy on this page as well that I think we don't want to lose sight of, just because we're in the mindset of getting these data privacy agreements, that we don't want to lose sight of other things data privacy related. So utilize that resource as well. Just the weekly process for what we're doing here. We're basically trying to give you some information to show that you're not alone in this process, that there is progress being made with the statistics and the originating agreements, and sharing some tips and suggestions, uh, reminding people of the resources that are available, sharing upcoming events, and then answering your questions and showing you how to do things that may help you in this process. So just a chance to come together on a regular basis. And that way, if you miss 1 week, you're not missing like 3 weeks at a time. If we only held these monthly, if you missed on a monthly basis, then so there's a lot of repeated stuff, but at the same time, there's always some new stuff that should be available to you if you want to attend these on a weekly basis. And I see a lot of familiar names in the room as we get going here. So statistics wise, just looking at this first number, this is the number of districts that have requested an account in the database that are capable of managing their agreements inside the database. That doesn't mean that they've uploaded anything, that they've done anything. That just means that they have the ability to manage agreements. The signed DPAs means that those agreements, they can be one-off agreements. So if a district just has an agreement with a vendor, they can just upload that and keep track of it in the database. If they've gone and used the Illinois NDPA agreement and created an originating agreement, they can upload that and make it available to other districts to subscribe to. And then a good majority of those 1,700 agreements are actually that, in that they are subscribing agreements that people have used the Exhibit E process to piggyback on an originating agreement. So if you look down the column, 134 districts have actually entered into at least one originating agreement. So they've done the process as far as sending out the Illinois NDPA to a vendor, had the vendor complete the Illinois NDPA and return it and get it signed, and then uploaded that as an originating agreement so that other districts can then subscribe to that. Of those 134, it looks like we have 255 different originating agreements. So it's good to see those numbers going up, and that just shows that we are making progress towards getting agreements with vendors, and the process is working. I know through emails and through conversations that I'm seeing that there's lots of questions about accuracy of agreements and stuff like that. And that's something we're trying to work through as far as quality assurance and quality management of what's happening with the agreements and making sure all the boxes are checked and those types of things. And so just be aware that we are kind of all of the 400, well, let's just use the 134 number. If we just use the 134 number, that's 134 different districts, individuals, uh, people with other things coming at them that are uploading these originating agreements. And so they may miss a step, or they may do something that's not exactly right, and that's okay. We'll figure that out and we'll fix that if and when it needs needed. So just know that it's not necessarily going to be perfect at this point, that we're all kind of working towards making this work, but it beats each individual district trying to upload and manage this all on their own, and having to work with vendors one-on-one and those types of things. So it is a collaborative effort. Obviously, as educators, we've all heard about teachers working in groups and with students and all those issues. If we go back to our school days when we worked in groups, and just all of the stuff that goes with working in groups. So just be encouraged by the information that's on this slide, and that I think we're moving in the right direction. We're doing the right things, and we can obviously make it better, but we um, will attempt to do that. Just since last week's meeting, these are the new agreements, new originating agreements that are on there. And so just, it's a way for you to look at that. It's a way for me to realize that I need to go in and look at some of these agreements and just make sure, just do spot checks and figure out what's um, there and who's doing what and stuff like that. I get kind of caught up in everything as well. So if you do notice things that with originating agreements, or as you go to piggyback on an agreement, um, don't hesitate to reach out to me with that. It was suggested that I make a form for submitting things, and I have started thinking about that. It's just how much detail do I want to go into with people providing feedback and like this missing that and those types of things. I don't want to um, present you with a big form that says, okay, mark this and mark that, when maybe just an email with the information would be just as good. So we've all encountered that with tech requests from our teachers and stuff like that, that if you give them too many boxes to check and mark off, that they won't do it, and then they'll just stop you in the hallway and tell you that they have an issue that's been going on for 3 weeks, and that's not the thing we want. We want the easiest barrier or easiest way to submit things, and email tends to be that way. So if you do notice things, please share those with me, and we'll see if we can take care of those. And many of you are, and I'm probably not taking care of them as fast as you want, but we will try to tackle those. So just a little bit in a lot of the conversations I'm having around using the database and stuff, all come back to the NDPA agreement and what that is. And so I just want to take a little bit of time talking through the NDPA agreement. This is an agreement that was put together in July 2020 by a national organization called the Student Data Privacy Consortium. The majority of the agreement is that agreement. The terms coincide with federal laws, just terms and legal issues that we need to be concerned about. And then so when SOPPA came about, this is something that we jumped on as far as something that we could take advantage of. And just this is the second page out of the agreement, and just the key things here, I think, that make this document or make this agreement beneficial to all of us is that we can utilize this agreement. And then if we look at this bottom checkbox, this is for the Exhibit E. And when I talk about subscribing and piggybacking and all that stuff, if the vendor chooses to check this box and then sign the Exhibit E, then districts can utilize this initial agreement, originating agreement that was signed by school district A with the vendor, and then they can subscribe to this agreement. So that's really the key to all this working and making it work. And so the first step for you as a district is to take this Illinois NDPA to your legal team and make sure that they know, or that they're okay, that they've reviewed it and they're okay with this document. Um, One thing where this document came from, or the process it's gone through, that would be helpful to your legal team to know, is that it was developed at the national level with vendors and legal people and state alliances and all that stuff. And then at the state level, we had Robin Schwartz initially create one of the exhibits, which is Exhibit G. That's the state specific exhibit. Um, And then as districts started using it, more legal teams started looking at it and saying, I want this added. I'd like to do this, see this differently. So the Illinois Association of School Boards and the Illinois Council of School Attorneys, SOPA working group looked at Exhibit G and looked at the NDPA and created an Exhibit G that is state specific to Illinois that allows this agreement to really work for school districts across Illinois. And ideally, it will work for vendors around the country as well, because the vendor can look at the NDPA and know that that's a national agreement that's being utilized by 31 other states, have access to that in the Student Data Privacy Consortium. And each one of those states may have an Exhibit G that they can look at, or that the vendor can look at, so they don't have to look at the entire NDPA document when they go from Illinois to Wisconsin to Utah to California. They just look at the Exhibit G. Um, the same thing for school districts in Illinois. If you've had this vetted by your your legal team and other districts have done the same and they're using this agreement, then this agreement can be used um, with vendors, and a school district in Southern Illinois can look at this, um, a vendor agreement in Western Illinois, and say they're using the Illinois NDPA. So that's been vetted and we know that we can use that. Um, the only caveat to that is when it comes to this Exhibit H, which is other terms that can be set by the vendor or the school district. And so in the subscribing process, you would want to make sure that your legal is aware of what's in that Exhibit H and basically signs off on each one of those if they do exist. Some states have gone as far as saying no Exhibit H. Um, we're not ready to do that in this process as we get started. Um, so a lot of this is just a one-page description of the NDPA, and on May 3rd, I will go through and we'll record a new video that goes through the entire document, and we'll bring the PDF up on the screen and we'll go through the entire document and share that. That should be available in the YouTube playlist from um, a video that Sean Mullins made a few months ago. But as far as the exhibits, Exhibit A through F are all part of the NDPA agreement or the national agreement. And Exhibit A is just a description of the services. Again, that should be completed by the vendor and verified by you as a district. The Exhibit B is going to be the data elements that are being utilized within the application. Again, completed by the vendor, verified by you. Exhibit C, there's really nothing in there other than definitions. So you can kind of skip over that. Exhibit D is the disposition of data, talking about what happens when you're no longer using that service and you want to either delete your data or transfer that data out. And so that really is meant to be for future use. It's not necessarily something that needs to be filled out now or signed or any of those things. Exhibit E is that general offer of terms that's completed by the vendor. Um, and it's, excuse me, um, it's completed by the vendor. I might have to pause and go get a drink. Oh, I have a drink. My apologies. Um, general offer of terms that's completed by the vendor, and it's the bottom part of it's meant to be blank so that the subscribing LEA can fill that information out. Exhibit F is what security is being used by the vendor. Ultimately, that should probably be filled out. If it's not filled out, we should be questioning that. So make sure that your vendor's filling that out if you're doing an originating agreement. And we'll go back. And I know some people have found some of those that aren't, and there's just probably some confusion as to who should be filling that out and what that actually is. So we'll figure out those if they are blank. The Exhibit G is really just the Illinois state-specific information. There are a couple fields on that that have the vendor and the school district information in it, but ultimately that is just the Illinois specific terms that that group of school attorneys came up with. And then Exhibit H is that additional terms for the vendor and should be reviewed by you as the district and and whether it's the originating or the subscribing process, just know that those are beyond what is normally in the Illinois NDPA and what your legal team may have talked about originally. So a lot of stuff there. Again, we'll spend an hour on that on May 3rd, and there is a video to go back through some of that specifically and pause and listen to that again. Again, I met at the national level with the STPC today, talking about enhancements and those types of things. So please continue to share anything that you feel like would make the process easier. And I actually got an email today from somebody that I'll basically cut and paste what they suggested as a great idea for enhancing the database as far as those applications that don't necessarily use any data, but we want to be on the approved list, and so that we can use the resource listing as kind of that catch-all for things that we're doing in our district. So continue to fill that out and share your ideas with that. Just a couple of slides here. There are placeholders for policies related, for the board policies related to SOPPA. Those are available through Press and the Illinois Association of School Boards. If you're not a subscriber to Press, there is an email address here that you can click on to send an email to them. Again, if you're not a member of Press, you can, or not a subscriber to Press, you can get those documents because of the relationship with ISBE and IASB. So that's there for people for future use. Again, just a placeholder, just so it's there in the slideshow and available to you. There's a couple slides in here that I think are just really talk to what it is that is necessary for teachers to know. Just that communication is going to be key, and that they need to be communicating with their instructional people, their curriculum people, the technology people, what applications they're using, their principals, so that there can be a complete list of applications, and then decide whether or not there needs to be a agreement with each one of those applications. But it's a good way of just knowing what's being used in your district, and I think that's the primary thing that teachers need to know. As far as resources go, this and as far as a starting place for you to go when you're interacting with the database, you can always just bookmark the login to the STPC database and go to that anytime you want. I guess my suggestion would be to come to this page first, just to be reminded of the events that are coming up. Be reminded of that the YouTube videos are there, that the sample ISPA communications are there for template use for emails to go out to a new vendor that you're trying to get an agreement with, or just some PDF documents there that help with conversations with your principals or your leadership, as far as having conversations around what the workflow looks like and the different things. And then there's a couple YouTube playlists that are there for you to take advantage of. One is the All Things SOPPA, and the other one is the how-to videos that are available to you. And this is the YouTube playlist that has the basically the how-to stuff, and they're relatively short videos, a couple minutes each one of them. You can go through and look at those, and Sean Mullins from Olympia School District has done a great job keeping them shorter and being specific on certain things, so you can watch. You can basically set it and forget it and play from beginning to end. And I feel like I'm doing infomercials when I'm doing these presentations. So set it and forget it, and listen through them all the way through. Or if you need to learn about a specific thing, you can do that. Or if you ask a question and I know it's in a video, I may send you to the video. So that's just a resource that's available to you. And if there's additional videos that we need to make, please reach out to me. And I think that was also in an email today as well, of a suggestion of a video to make. So make those suggestions, provide feedback, whatever you're asking, other people may be asking, and it may be helpful. We just need people to ask the question the first time. Upcoming events on Thursday morning, Lisa Swartz, who's the regional ed tech coordinator for the western part of Illinois. She's gathered a few school people together to have a conversation around what tools they're using in the process of doing SOPPA. And that's kind of a weird thing to say, doing SOPPA. But whether those tools are Catch On or Learn Platform, Ed Privacy, Education Framework, I think is another name for Ed Privacy, or just using the SDPC tools and just using those. So just know that that's available to you. And I clicked on the link. Other upcoming events, I mentioned the April 26th and May 10th. That's the using the database. And again, we'll record these and make sure that they're on the YouTube playlist, and then also the Illinois NDPA. So just really kind of going through doing a live presentation so that if there are interactions that we need to have and questions that we're not doing in the other videos, that we can make sure we get those things answered. And live is always better than recorded, but obviously your time is valuable. So if you can make those, that's great. If not, they will be available to you. Other things coming up, just got some additional tech related things. I talk so much about SOPPA, and that's kind of what my job is right now, but we're doing other things technology wise, just as you're doing other things technology wise in your districts. And we all wear lots of hats besides the SOPPA hat. So these are just some things coming up, and we're following up our Google workshops with some Microsoft workshops or webinars. And the first one is kind of talking about using both Microsoft and Google and single sign-on and those types of things within your district. So check out also the events. They're available for your teachers and for your admins and all those people as well. One of the most asked questions, whether it's in our question and answer on Tuesdays, or if it's on the Tech Geeks email list, or on the LTC community, wherever you're at, you may, well, what about Google? If we can't get Google, then we don't need to get anybody else. I've had several conversations over the past few months, and I think I've communicated that well with everybody. I just had one on, I want to say Friday, with a couple of the different representatives for Google, and they are totally aware of the deadline, and they are communicating with us about that deadline, and not just me, but anytime that question gets asked to Annie Nash or Mike Patterson or anybody else at Google, they're communicating that Google's aware of it. They're doing things. They're also, and I got this term, I should give credit to Ed Privacy. I got this term from their website, and they do like a checklist of things that are SOPA related. And they say that um, a company or a vendor is SOPA ready. And what that means is they check all the boxes for data privacy as far as the laws go. But the one thing that makes it SOPA compliant is that there's actually a written signed agreement. And so they are SOPA ready. They have, and they will make sure they are because it's state law and that they will follow all the state laws. And that they are trying to work with the NDPA. So they're working at the national level. They've collected the NDPA document and all the Exhibit Gs from the relevant states that are working towards getting an agreement with Google. Um, and their idea would be to specifically, hopefully, sign the Illinois NDPA as it is. Obviously, they've got to think about how they duplicate that across the nation, across the world, um, those types of things. So whatever mechanism it is that we end up signing an agreement with Google, we will have some kind of signed agreement, and hopefully it falls into the Illinois NDPA and can be subscribed and originated and all those types of things. But if it's just if there's another mechanism, another thing to happen, we'll have that agreement. Um, and then I actually met with somebody from Apple. They reached out to me through somebody, some district said, talk to Chris, for good or bad. I'm the person that they talk to. And so we've begun that conversation about what the NDPA is and how it could benefit Apple and how it can benefit us, and what mechanisms are already in place with Apple, and those types of things. And the same thing with Microsoft. Microsoft is a partner of ILTPP, and so they've had conversations and shared a document, and I saw that document being shared out on one of the email lists or communities that somebody had forwarded on as well. And again, that makes them SOPA ready, but it may not make them SOPA compliant in the form of that there's an agreement that's been signed. So that's just something um, that we need to figure out and make work. And I do see, and I have not had any communication with Adobe myself. I know that there has been some conversations around Adobe and from other people, and just seeing things on lists, um, and that'll be something we'll have to figure out and have that conversation. But ultimately, I guess the way I look at all this stuff is um, it just requires an agreement um, of some kind, and then we can utilize the database to do the subscribing and those types of things if the company's willing to do that, which is going to be in their best interest to do that. If there's a way to uh, take some of the burden off of them, and those types of things. So it's definitely conversations. If you're talking to somebody, or if you have need some additional information or different people, and it's also something that we're having conversations at the national level with the NDPA, and how that the usage of that document and how that can benefit. And if we need to do that with Adobe, we can have those conversations as well. All right. I'm going to take a breath. And I took a lot longer than I usually do to get through that information. I think I spent a lot of time on the NDPA, which is a good thing. Um, so um, we'll take some time to go through the questions and answers. Again, this is great that we have the opportunity to do this. If there are questions that you want answered, please provide those in the Slido functionality. Um, If we can't get to all the questions, we will try to answer those. If you need follow-up or more information on any of these questions, please share those offline, or not offline, but another way on the line. As oh, I was going to quote a movie line, but I can't think of who said it on the line. But anyway, somebody can put it in chat. And I got one person with their camera on, and she's shaking her head and smiling, so that's a good thing. So I know I'm actually talking to someone and not just a bunch of black boxes. The internship, thank you very much. All right, so let's go through, and you'll notice that the way that the questions come to the top is because people have upvoted them. And so if there's a certain question that you want answered during this time, definitely vote that up. And at any time, if there's a question that's being asked that I'll jump out to a how-to or something like that, I can definitely do that. And what I tried to do in the YouTube video is provide in the description the chapter information, timestamps, so that if you want to go to the question and answer portion and just listen to that, you can do that. Or if there's a specific how-to that I jump out to during the question and answer, you can jump to that as well. So we'll jump into this and go. After you use the Exhibit E creator, do you still need an email to the vendor with the Exhibit E? No, you should not need to do that. It should do it automatically, but I don't have any. I need to work with SDPC to provide some kind of verification that the email has been sent, because I'm not sure that the vendor is going to reply to every message that gets sent, so that you have verification that it went, and those types of things. So it's definitely something that is supposed to be happening. I had one report of something that they reached out to the vendor and they did not get the email. So it is something I am aware of and checking on to try to get you some peace of mind that it is happening. But I don't have that in place right now. But you should be aware that it should be happening. The main thing to realize is when you are using the SDPC tools and are using when the person uploading the originating agreement, there is a field for providing that email address that would be on the Exhibit E document. So here it says email address of the vendor to send the assigned Exhibit E's to. Ultimately, that needs to be filled out in order for the I almost said automagic. The auto, I think I did just a minute ago, the auto Exhibit E creator to work properly. But that's the functionality that is built in. It's supposed to work that way, and I'll work to getting you verification to make sure that it is in some way for you to have that checks and balances that it is. So that should be happening. While I'm here, I'm just going to show the auto Exhibit E creator. And I'd never know how many people are brand new to this, and so they don't know. But this is something we'll cover in the April 26th, so next Monday. Basically, this is a way, the auto Exhibit E creator is a way for you to see all those originating agreements that are available in the database. So if we look here, there's 254. I think I had 200. Well, there's 255, I think, on the statistics page. and I've already subscribed to one, so that's why there's only 254 in this list. So as you subscribe to them, or as you create the Exhibit E for these, they should disappear from this list and be available to you. So looking at the Illinois, or the process here, what you would do if you needed an agreement with Amplified IT, the first step would be to kind of go down through the originating agreement to make sure that it is something that you want to sign on to. And just initially, the first thing I see when I do this, that the Exhibit E checkbox isn't checked. But as I come down through here, and I get to the Exhibit E, you would check your A and B and make sure those are filled out. Again, D doesn't necessarily have to be filled out. Exhibit E is here, so it's available. It wasn't checked in that initial checkbox, so that's something I need to go back and we need to either fix or just, I guess from a legal standpoint, I don't know if that makes a difference, but it should be checked ultimately. So once you verified this, when you click on create Exhibit E, it'll take your account information that you've of the user that's logged in and put it at the bottom of that agreement, and then it will look like this. So if I go to manage my agreements now, I can look at one that I've already done, and if I look at Exhibit E for Seesaw, I'll see that that agreement is signed at the bottom by me. And then ultimately this agreement should have been emailed out to Seesaw. But that process is all handled within the Auto Exhibit E creator. So, and then going back to the question, it's just a matter of that email should be sent with that Exhibit E document attached to it, is what is intended to happen, and I need to verify that. Another common question, and probably something I need to create a slide for just so it's always there. Do we need an Illinois NDPA for state tests? Ultimately, the state tests is going to be an Illinois State Board of Education process that they will have to have some kind of data privacy agreement with the different vendors that they're using for those purposes. Ultimately, it's important that you as a district know that your student data is being used for these purposes. And I think it's important that you have that listed somewhere, whether that's in just a word processing document or a spreadsheet or something, just that we supply information to the state board and we know that it's used for IAR testing, ISA testing, WIDA, free and reduced lunch, those debit card stuff for the meal reimbursement stuff that for remote learners that was happening and maybe still is happening. Just so have that stuff as a resource, but ultimately you shouldn't need a data privacy agreement. Thank you for the clarification, the PEBT cards. But you shouldn't need that for the state testing. If you're using NWA or Pearson or anything like that for your own assessments, then yes, you would definitely want to have a DPA agreement for those particular things. The press policy, again, our district uses it, but why would we request materials or reference this? Does this need to be posted? The press policy is the board policy that is associated with the SOPPA legislation and anything else that's in that policy. So policy 7:345 that was referenced on that slide is the press policy, the board policy that goes along with that. There's also an administrative procedures document within that policy that should be utilized as well to talk about who's going to sign your agreements and those types of things. So definitely check with your superintendent, check with your uh, school board, Illinois Association of School Boards representative to get clarification on how to use those documents. But it should be just the same as you would use any other policy within your district. It's just provided. The only time you would request those information if you don't use Press as a subscription and you want to use those policies within your um, school district. And I don't think I have the security set on to unmute yourself. Let me do that. If there are questions that you have, and if a particular question is your particular question and I don't answer it, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions as we go. Are there downsides to signing all exhibitees regardless of whether or not we currently use the servicer tool? The downside would be that you would have a bunch of stuff on your website, um, resource listing that you wouldn't necessarily be using. So that would be one thing if you intended to use that resource listing for communication with your parents and those types of things, then you would have a lot of extra stuff on there that wouldn't be there. And then ultimately, you want to verify the information that's there and look at that particular tool when you're using it. So you probably want to just use them as you need them versus just going through and hitting the uh, create exhibit tool all the way down. So definitely review the originating agreement that's there to make sure it's applicable to your district. And that way you'll know what's in those documents and what's available to you. The upside is you would have agreements with all those places, but you're not necessarily using those tools. So I'm not sure in the long run if it would save you any time or effort if you did it that way. If we put student names in Microsoft Active Directory, do we need an agreement with Microsoft? That goes way beyond my knowledge of what should be signed and what shouldn't be signed. But initially, if it's just within your own environment, that's one thing. If you're uploading it to Microsoft Azure or something like that, um, then it starts to raise questions. So just um, start that would be that process that I would work through to see if it needs to be signed or not. But that's going to be kind of a if it's on your own district and or in your own cloud account or whatever, there's going to be differing opinions on that. So definitely check with other people. And as we figure these things out, we'll have those answers. Right now, I don't have that answer. So, but that's definitely something that we can work as a group together to come up with those types of things. Has a general acceptable use policy been developed with SOPPA in mind that we can use one for our students, parents, and other staff? No, not that I'm aware of. I think there are some districts that are including that with different resources. But as far as I know, and I don't have access to that at this point, but that is definitely something that we can continue to provide. I know ISBE at some point will have, well, I shouldn't say I know, they are supposed to have information with regards to parents' rights and parents' processes and those types of things. So that would be part of that. But I'm not sure if acceptable use policy, like I'll check on that. Yeah, I don't have a specific answer for that. What is needed to prove the district has implemented and maintained reasonable security practices? Again, that's something that the state board is working on. I've actually been talking to Eric Rocky the last couple of weeks, and we haven't coordinated on getting him to be part of this conversation or the All Things SOPA conversation, but he is working towards that, and they're working towards having some information. Hopefully next week we will have some more information about that. But ultimately, what we've recommended from the LTC standpoint is listed on the resource page of the ISPA stuff. If you look at the bottom, there's a list of reasonable security practices. There's 43 SEP controls that are part of the CIS top 20 controls. And it's just kind of a good starting point for everybody, whether or not you're a small business or you're a school district or you're even somebody at home trying to protect your information. So those are some things that can be done. There are some tools that help map that stuff out as well. So you can keep track of it as a district, or you can just keep track of it in a spreadsheet or something like that to say, this is what our process is, and this is how we're doing it, and this is how we do backups, and this is how we do passwords, and this is how we do configurations, and this is how we do inventory. This is how we do part of a reasonable security practice is to have an inventory of all the software. That's kind of what we're doing with SOPA, having an inventory of those different software applications, where our data is at and where our information's at. So again, ISBE will have specifics, but a general recommendation is to use the top or the CIS controls implementation group 1, which is listed on our website. Is that list actually all required by law, or is it a list of suggestions of what must be considered reasonable? And I'm going back, I'm assuming that's related to the security practices. Again, there's reasonable is a very generic term. So required is a very specific term, and I don't think those two go together. So you're asking the right question, but I don't know that there's an answer to that. Reasonable just means that you're trying to do stuff and doing those things, but I don't think there's anything specifically required by law. And even if everything was required by law, a checklist of security practices, that's not going to stop something from happening necessarily. So we just don't know what that list of every single thing that we have to do to protect us is. So would an on-premises require an Exhibit E agreement? Would it require an agreement? It's possible. I know I had a conversation with the school district today about what they have a in-house on-premise hosted Skyward. It's in their system, or it's in their building. It's not hosted in the cloud. Ultimately, if those agreements, or if those applications, whether they're hosted in-house or out of, the agreement would be based on, does the software have, I'm having one of those conversations in my head. Ultimately, it just depends. I mean, I think if you're especially an on-premise SIS, you're not the only one that has an on-premise SIS. And so if you approached a Skyward or somebody like that that had an agreement in place for their hosted service, would they be willing to sign or extend the Exhibit E for hosting it in-house? Um, Ultimately, if they have any kind of inroads into your database or backdoors into your database or anything like that, I think you would want to have some kind of agreement with them, whether it's the full Illinois NDPA or at least just having that on a list somewhere that that you're aware of, that so you have that communication tool and are able to say, hey, our SIS is hosted internally, and so we don't have an NDPA or we don't have a data privacy agreement, but we're aware that nobody should have access to it and it's only us, and those types of things. So you kind of want to have just that story to go along with your different applications and what you're using. Is there a video showing the full process of originating a contract? There should be a couple videos as far as uploading an originating contract. And I kind of read this as maybe a different question as far as like, how do I negotiate or have the vendor fill out the doc or the agreement and the document and that process, and I don't think we have something like that. So I'm going to say we have a video or a couple videos as far as uploading an originating agreement, but we don't have a video that would show like or talk about going through the process of, here's, you send out the Illinois NDPA blank document to vendor A, and then they fill out what portions they want to that they need to fill out, and then they send it back. And that's a good idea for a video to go through that process for people that to make them more comfortable with that initial reach out. And again, I'm gonna jump out of this for a second, and I'll come back to answering questions. And I want to kind of keep it to an hour, but I'll continue to answer questions as long as people stick around. Ultimately, the next steps are ask questions, review the resources that we have available. Connect with other people, whether that's me or other people that are doing this process in your area. Um, Connect on the different webinars and things that we're doing, and then connect with us every Tuesday to get your questions, specific questions answered, and just know what's going on, and pick up little pieces and tidbits each week. And if you can't make it every week, I mean, that's a big commitment. But at least it's there if you have a question and you need something answered. It's a way for you to ask the question, and hopefully other people can get the answer, their questions answered as well. And then always you can reach out to me and schedule time within my calendar and do those types of things. So I just wanted to kind of give, not that you need permission, but just give you permission to step away if that's something you wanted to do. But I will continue to answer questions until we get through most of them, and then we'll gather again next Tuesday. Before that, there is the Thursday panel discussion about the different tools, and then the Microsoft Google thing is on Friday, and then next Monday before we meet Tuesday is the how to use the database tools and go through and really understand what all is possible within the database. So hopefully you can join us for one or all of those. So we'll go back to answering more questions again. If you do have specific questions, we can definitely feel free to unmute and ask questions as well. I'll just kind of go down through this and see what other stuff's here, and you can see that there's lots of questions. Some Illinois NDPA have Exhibit E not checked, but the top portion of Exhibit E is completed. Cami runs. Okay. I appreciate that, and I will use that information to help go through and vet some of that or review some of those things. Would SOPA apply to student employees in our HR system, which is different than our SIS? Yeah, that becomes very specific, and it is student information. Maybe. I mean, it depends on what your. Ultimately, I think it's going to be a call for your legal department and what they feel the intent of the law was, and whether or not that's something you need to do. Ultimately, it would be like anything else. If there was a breach of your HR system, you're going to need to follow all the things within SOPA as far as reporting that to parents and those types of things. So just be aware that if you do have that information in there, that you need to somehow know to. I mean, you're going to know because they're in the system, but whether or not you specifically have to have a DPA, that would be a call for your lawyer. Do we need agreements with military branches that gather student data and information and have previously signed off? That's again one of those that is probably related to another law, and I want to say that that's probably something related to FERPA or one of those things. I know in past Secure Ed Schools conferences when PTAC was doing presentations, they would always mention those things as something that you need to know what information you're giving them and all those types of things, and whether or not that's part of your standard procedures or directory information type of things. But that would not necessarily fall under SOPA for that particular reason. But so it's not necessarily a SOPA data privacy agreement issue, but it is a data privacy issue. I don't believe that you specifically need agreements with any state organization, intergovernmental agreements, those types of things with other schools or districts. I think you would be covered under other data privacy issues with regards to those types of things. The intent of SOPA and the data privacy agreements, again, is the K-12 software type of stuff. Can you show us what we need to fill out before sending to a vendor? What do they have to fill out on the document? What should I check when they sign and send? I will make sure that we get a video for that. That's a specific thing that I think we can definitely provide that to. Yeah, so I mean, somebody's commenting on the reasonable security practices. Yeah, I mean, the initial legislation actually called for specific NIST frameworks and stuff like that. So at some point we were looking for a line to draw, and that's where we landed as far as like a recommendation, and that is always subject to change as far as the reasonable security practices. But if you look at what is in those things, it is a lot, but again, it kind of comes back to some of those uh, just basic stuff. but there has to be a line, and so that's why we drew it at the 43 and not the 100 and whatever the next implementation group is, or just using the NIST framework, which is I think 123 or something like that. We answered that question. We have a slide for that. If you find Exhibit E without a vendor email but signed and otherwise good, is it okay to insert the email if you can find it on their website or LinkedIn? Yeah, if you see that, we just want to make sure it goes to the right place. So if there's an Exhibit E without a vendor's email, we can definitely we want to make sure we get the right email that's going to. It's not just going to be somebody at them. So just if that is something that you find, email those information to me and we'll look at it. We've heard about the July 1st date, but what is realistic about districts not using resources that we still waiting agreements on? Flipgrid. Yeah, I think that's going to be a question that's going to be that it's hard to answer because we don't know. I don't know that at any one point that you're going to actually say we don't need to use these applications. That kind of goes back to the whole data privacy, cybersecurity conversation as far as like that risk management or just the just do we want to do this, or what are the consequences of doing something like this? Like, so I think those are going to be ongoing questions, and we don't necessarily know what the consequences are. The worst case scenario would be if there was a data breach and you didn't have an agreement and it came back and that you didn't have the effort there to make contact with the vendor and try to get the agreement, and you just kind of did it on your own. So again, Flipgrid is going to be one of those that a majority of school districts in Illinois are using. That's a Microsoft product actually, and so we just need to keep those types of things in the forefront, making sure that we're talking, communicating, whether it's at a district level or whether it's at the this process level, trying to solve those particular applications, whether it's Flipgrid or Skyward or Seesaw or whatever application it might be. Has anyone started a contract with testing sites like KeyMath, Pearson, Q Global? A good way, so I will jump out. This would be a good, we can look at just a quick way of looking at what may be there. If the application itself is not have an agreement, you can look under view statewide new requests. And when you're looking at this, you can search for something like Pearson, and you'll see all these different applications that somebody may have requested different things. So Ames Web Plus, modifications pending, that's in the, somebody's working on that. These other applications are listed there, but they're not necessarily have any progress workflow associated with them. So we don't really know where they're at in the process, but that's one way of finding out if they're there. The other way is just to see if they do have an agreement. Would really be to check the auto exhibit E creator and search for Pearson. Oops, if you spell it right. So you can see FunBrain is an option. EasyBridge typing are different applications that have agreements. So if you don't find them there, more than likely they don't have agreements with them. So that would be a way to check that. But those are a couple different ways of searching the database. And then another thing we can do is search the national database to see if other states have maybe started that process or have an agreement, and then we can use that as leverage to help with the process for getting them for an Illinois school district. When should I refer an operator's NDPA to be reviewed by the district's attorneys? Ultimately, if they've added anything into the Exhibit H, I would, as long as you're using that Illinois NDPA and you've had the Illinois NDPA initially reviewed by your district's attorneys, um, then they should give you the go ahead to say, as long as it's within the scope of the A through G exhibits, then it should be okay to sign. And obviously that's up to your district attorney, but if there is an Exhibit H, um, then they would probably want to review it and to check off on those types of things. And then ultimately, as the process continues, if there's certain things that are showing up in the Exhibit H on a regular basis, then you could check those things off, um, and get permission from your attorneys to do those on a regular basis. Why are some districts putting 1OA posted on agreements which are clearly the old agreement? That's a flaw in the database system that I'm trying to work out. The option's not there because we transitioned to a new agreement. The option's not there for them to upload it as a one agreement. The only option is a 1A, so that's why that's happening. And we'll work on getting that corrected. A response to agreement 1.0 question. I had one that I posted recently because I was sent the agreement to the provider. The new one was not out yet. Yeah, so that's why they went and had uploaded it, but the option had changed. They had already started the process with the 1.0 agreement. And there's the same answer. Mifflin, I found the originating school inserted the Illinois NDPA without getting the Exhibit E checked and nor the Exhibit E created. Please advise. I will explore that and look at that.